Hello, my dear aspirants and future officers. Welcome to this class of Sutram Academy, where we have started this new series, which is known as The Edge, where we will be analyzing the Hindu, the editorials, and the dailies, which will enhance your general studies, and you'll get an excellent answer writing material from this information. Okay, so the news that we are going to cover today, it will be from the 27th of March, and the topics that, if you can see here, are these are the most important topics that we have seen in the Hindu edition of this one, and we will be discussing of one of the important topics here. For all other topics, if you want this document where everything is written, you can contact us in the description given below. So going forward, we'll be discussing about the in Iran's grant of four countries, India plus four countries, to access the Hormuz. And also we'll be understanding about the local currency payments for the West Asian oil that India will be doing, the India is planning to go ahead with. This news has occurred on the page number one of the Hindu newspaper, and the syllabus that is relevant for the international relations. This is also relevant for BPSC and other state PCS exams. So moving forward, let's go ahead and dive into the topic. So the West Asian landscape has shifted into a high-intensity conflict zone. We know that, and after the outbreak of the U.S.-Israel war on Iran, and this war it has started on 28th of February. Like 28th of February is the important date that you need to remember when the outbreak had happened, the outbreak of the war. Now, so at the heart of this crisis in the Strait of Hormuz, basically this is the main conflict zone, the Strait of Hormuz maritime choke point, through which nearly one third of world's liquefied natural gas, the LNG, the liquefied natural gas that is flowing, and 20% of the oil of the world, 20% of oil of world that passes through from this particular region that is known as the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, so uh, it is a significant display of sovereign signaling that Iran has transitioned from a total blockade to a managed transit system guaranteeing exclusive passage to friendly nations. So, this is something important that you need to understand. The friendly nations that we are talking here are the nations that have maintained a neutral stance on this war, and this includes India, certainly, also China, then Russia, Iraq, and there's one more name that might surprise you, and the name is Pakistan. So the role of Pakistan is also quite, I mean, debatable here for now. But if you go ahead understanding that what has happened and how the Iranian government has come to this particular conclusion that which countries are their friends and which are folly, will understand from their strategic signaling what Tehran is actually trying to signal. Strategic signaling is something very important that Tehran is doing here. So the first part is that it is dividing the opposition, okay, and rewarding the neutral countries. All right. So by allowing India and China's vessel to pass, Iran is basically utilizing the strait as a tool of hybrid warfare. So we can say that this, if they are doing this, this can be considered as a hybrid warfare, wherein by exempting major Asian powers, Iran is seeking to prevent a global consensus against its blockade and effectively isolating the US and Israel. And as we talk about the reward for this neutrality, India's inclusion is a diplomatic dividend for its refusal to join Western-led sanctions and its historic strategic autonomy. So, since we know that India has got, as a policy of strategic autonomy, so it is something related to that. So, there is one more important point that we need to understand that is known as the toll booth strategy. Okay, the toll booth strategy. So, what is this toll booth strategy? So, recently, Iran's parliament is reportedly drafting a legislation to impose transit fees, potentially turning a global common into a revenues generating sovereign corridor. So, what basically Iran is trying to do that this particular corridor of the Strait of Hormuz. So far, it is a free area. Okay, you can cross through the Strait of Hormuz freely without paying any taxes or any transit fees. But now, what the Iran's parliament is deciding that they will be considering it as a toll booth, so that whenever a country passes through with their ships, etc., So they will have to pay a transit fee. All right. So the transit fee is something that is coming into picture. Next is the economic implications. We need to understand the double hit on India that has happened. So we need to understand what is that double hit that India has got so far. So India's economy is facing a dual challenge. We understand that threatens its macroeconomic stability. First is what the surging of oil prices. The world is affected, but India is also very much affected with this surging of oil prices. And there is one more important thing that has happened, that is currency depreciation. We know that currently the price of, I mean, the value of $1 is something around $1 is something around how much? 94.1 rupees, right? 94.1 rupees is currently what is the value of $1. So even when we talk about the surging oil prices, we understand that when it was for the February, during the Feb month, the per barrel cost India was paying was only around $69. All right. But after February, this was in February. But as we see it right now, in the by the end of the March, this price has increased up to $123.15. That is in the end of March. All right. So this particular issue has hit India in double way, that the prices of the oil are also increasing and the currency is also depreciating. So India's pivot to local currency trade is what we are considering, as we see in the next article, that India eyes local currency payments for West Asian oil. We understand that to counter this, Indian government, I mean, we are planning to go ahead with the local currency. So to counter this, the Indian government is experimenting with local currency settlements. Okay, so what is this local currency settlement mechanism? So basically, we are trying to settle every trade with our own currency, that is rupee. So local currency settlement is an important concept that you must be aware of. So whatever we are purchasing from, or from the Gulf Cooperation Council countries, so we will be paying with our local currency. So what would be the impact or benefit with that? So the import coverage that we could have cover of 80% of oil imports. All right. So 80% of our oil imports will come under this. Second is we'll save around 5 to 6% in currency conversion fees. Like 5 to 6% is what we'll save in currency conversion, because when we are converting the rupee into dollar, that way we are losing this 5 6% of the amount. Suppose it was 1,000 crore rupees that we are paying, so 5 6%, it's a huge amount, like 50 60 crore rupees is what we are losing just in the name of currency conversion from rupee to dollar. So this will be saved from us. All right. Also, our reliance on the Swift, that is the US dollar based payment system. So the Swift system will our reliance on it will also decrease, and this, however, leads to de-dollarization, which is a very important concept. So this will happen, and there is a risk. Thus, there is a risk of US sanctions. US sanctions. If you are abandoning the dollar, the US won't be happy. Okay, so this is something which also contains some risk. So, if you understand the challenges to India's energy security, that despite friendly status, India energy security remains precarious. Okay, because we have a supply chain fragility right now. The supply chain is an issue, right? So, where the ships like Shivalik and the Nanda Devi they have transited, but the volume is insufficient to meet the India's total demand. Okay, so we see that this supply chain is quite in a fragile state right now. Again, the naval vulnerability. All right. So this is basically about the sinking of the Iranian frigate. We know that IRIS, the Iranian frigate, Dena, IRIS Dena. You need to remember this particular term. So IRNS Dena was sunk down by the US near Sri Lanka in Indian Oceans. All right. So this was a major, provocation. So this highlights that the conflict is spilling into Indian Ocean as well, which basically threatens India's extended neighborhood. We know that India controls this particular region everywhere, right? The Bay of Bengal, the Indian Ocean. So if US dominance is seen over here, US is taking actions, we understand that India's somehow supremacy is also a factor that comes into picture. The third part we need to understand is the Trump factor, that the US remains a vital partner for India in technology and defense. And yet its aggressive stance on tariff is something de-dollarization will create a policy dilemma for India. So the friendship factor with the US, the Trump factor, I would rather call it the Trump factor, is something that is also into picture, that the aggressive tariff stance on de-dollarization will create a policy dilemma for India, because if at all India goes ahead, uh, with this local currency system, the local currency settlement system. So in that case, there will be a chance of SWIFT system not using the SWIFT system, and the risk of US sanctions also emerges. So if I have to conclude this particular topic, then I would say that for India, the current crisis is a test of multi-alignment policy. While the safe passage through Hormuz provides immediate relief, the long-term solution lies in strategic hedging, and India must balance its special and privileged. You know, we have a privileged, special and privileged ties with Iran and Russia as well. So we have to make sure that the comprehensive global strategic partnership that we hold with US, we need to balance with the US, and we also need to balance with Iran and Russia, because you know that Russia is also helping Iran in this war. So this is something very important. So if I have to ask you a question that you can see on the screen right now, so you need to answer that question, and also if you have, if you want to write answers, so there is a mains question as well. So you can go ahead and write an answer based on the discussions we had right now. And so this is the topic we have covered today, and in this particular edition. And if at all you want the whole PDF of this uh, of this today's analysis, the edge. So you can contact us through the number given in the description box. All right. So I'll see you in the next class. Till then, take care.